The Giant with the Three Golden Hairs. There once was a poor man who had only one son. The child had been born under a lucky star, and it was foretold of him that in his 18th year he would marry the king's daughter. Soon after this, it happened that the king passed through the village in disguise, and when he asked the people what news there was, they answered, "A child has been born, and they say he is fated to marry the king's daughter when he is 18 years old." The king was greatly disturbed by this prophecy. He went to the child's parents and said, "Let me take the boy. I'll bring him up properly and care for him." They refused. However, when the stranger offered them a great deal of money, they at last consented, for they were very poor. Besides, they said to themselves, "He is a luck child, and no harm can come to him." The child put the boy in a box and rode away. And when he came to a stream that was very deep, he threw the box into the current, thinking, "That's one prophecy that will never be fulfilled." The box, however, did not sink. It floated down the stream like a little boat and did not even leak. The child remained dry and safe inside. At last it stopped at the dam of a mill, 2 miles from the king's palace. The miller saw it and drew it to the shore with a long pole, thinking he had found a treasure. But when he opened the box, he found a beautiful child who smiled merrily up at him. Now the miller and his wife had no children, and they were overjoyed. "Heaven has sent him to us," they said, and they cared for him as if he had been their own child, so that he grew into a fine, handsome lad, admired by everyone. Years went by, and then one day the king was passing the mill when a sudden storm caused him to find shelter there. He saw the tall young man and asked the miller if this was his son. "No," replied the miller. "I found him in a box in the mill dam when he was a tiny babe, almost 18 years ago." "He's a fine boy," said the king. "Can you spare him for a short while so that he might carry a letter to my wife, the queen? I'll give him 2 pieces of gold for his trouble." "As your majesty commands," said the miller, and told his son to prepare for the journey. Now the king had realized that the boy was none other than the luck child he had tried to drown in the stream. So he wrote to the queen, saying, "As soon as the bearer of this arrives, let him be killed and buried at once, so that all will be over when I return." The young man set out on his journey with the letter, but he lost his way. And when evening came, he found himself in a great forest. Through the darkness he saw a small light, and going toward it he found that it came from a small cottage. He went in, and there was an old woman sitting up by the fire. Upon seeing the young man, the old woman was filled with terror and cried, "What are you doing here? Where are you going?" "I'm on my way to the queen, to whom I must deliver a letter," he told her. "But I've lost my way in this dark wood, and I shall be very grateful if I may stay here until morning." "You can't stay here," she said. "This is a robber's hut. If they find you when they return, they'll murder you." "I'll take my chances," he replied, "for I am too tired to go a step further." And he settled himself down on a bench and went to sleep. A short time later, the robbers came home and demanded to know who the strange lad was. "He's just a poor innocent who lost his way in the wood," the old woman said. "I pitied him, so I let him stay the night. He is carrying a letter to the queen." The robbers took the letter and opened it. When they read it and realized that it contained the boy's death sentence, they took pity upon him as well, and they tore the letter up and wrote another. The second letter said that the young man was to marry the king's daughter the moment he arrived at the palace. They let the lad sleep until morning. When he awoke, they showed him the right path to the palace and sent him on his way with the letter in his pocket. As soon as the queen received the letter. She did as it commanded, and made all the arrangements for the wedding. Since the young man was very handsome, the princess loved him at first sight and was delighted to be his bride. And when the king returned to the palace soon afterward, he found that the prophecy had been fulfilled. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "My letter contained a different command." The queen gave him the letter, and the king read it for himself what was written in it. He realized that it had been changed for the one he himself had written, and asked the young man what had become of the letter he had entrusted to him. "I don't know," he replied. "It must have been exchanged in the forest where I spent the night." The king turned white with rage and cried, "No man shall have my daughter unless he descends into the great cave and brings me 3 golden hairs from the head of the giant who lives there. Do this, and I'll give my consent." "I'm sure I can manage that," said the young man. He said goodbye to the princess and hurried off to the great cave and the giant. At the first town he came to, the guard at the gate stopped him and asked him his trade and what he knew. "I know everything," replied the young man. In that case, you're just the person we've been waiting for. Be so good as to tell us why the fountain in the marketplace will give no more water." "I'll tell you gladly," he replied, "when I come back." Then he went on and came to another town. And there was also a guard, asked him his trade and what he understood. "I understand everything," the young man answered. "Then help us, please," said the guard. "Tell us why a tree growing in the park, which once bore golden apples, now does not even produce a leaf." "Most willingly," he answered, "when I come back." He went on, and at last his path led him to the side of a great lake over which he must travel. The ferryman soon asked him what his trade was and what he knew. "I know everything," he said. "Then you can do me a great favor," said the ferryman. "Tell me why I must row back and forth over the lake and can never stop." "I'll tell you that," said the young man, "when I come home." Then they reached the other side of the lake, and the young man found himself at the entrance of the giant's dark cave. The giant was not at home, but his grandmother sat at the door in her easy chair. "What do you want?" she asked, staring at him. 3 golden hairs from the giant's head," he answered. "You ask for a great deal," she said. "If he finds you here when he returns, it will be bad for you. However, stay, and I'll see if I can help you." "Good," he said, "but I also need to know why the fountain is dry, why the trees that bore golden apples is now leafless, and what is it that binds the ferryman to his boat?" "What difficult questions," the old woman said. Then she changed him into an ant and hid him in the folds of her dress. "Now lie quietly and listen to all the giant says when I pull the golden hairs from his head," she said. In a little while, the giant came home, and as soon as he returned to the cave, he sniffed the air and cried, "All is not right here. I smell the flesh of a man." This is the original Jack and the Beanstalk. He searched everywhere, in all the corners, but could find no one, and his grandmother scolded him, crying, "Now you've turned everything upside down, and just when I'd finished putting it all in order. Sit down now and rest." Just to pause here again. This is the first time I'm reading this story. This was my niece's, or somebody I call my niece. She removed herself at 12 years old. Her name is Ava Rose. And this tattoo, that's her drawing. And I did that on a whim. That's how I dealt with her passing. Because it's connected to my heart. Now I can't slice that arm open. I scried this story. I opened the book. It opened to what I read last night. And I said, I know that's my story. I was 9:44 on the clock. So I opened it again. And this is the story it brought me to. So the giant put his head in her lap and fell asleep. As soon as he began to snore, she pulled out a golden hair from his head. "Ouch!" cried the giant. "What are you doing?" "I had a bad dream," she said, "and I took hold of your hair." "What did you dream?" he asked. "I dreamed the fountain in the marketplace of a town dried up and would give no more water. What caused it? Do you know?" "Of course I know," answered the giant. "Under a stone in the fountain sits a toad. When they get rid of him, the fountains will flow again." Having said this, he fell asleep once more, and the old woman pulled out another golden hair. "Now what are you doing?" cried the giant in rage. "Don't be cross," she said. "I did it in my sleep. I was dreaming again." "And what did you dream this time?" he asked. "I dreamed that in a great kingdom there grows a beautiful tree which once bore golden apples, but which now does not even have a single leaf. What is the reason for that?" "Aha!" said the giant. "That is a secret they would like to know. At the root of the tree is a mouse is gnawing. If they get rid of him, the tree will bear golden apples again. Otherwise, the tree will soon die altogether. Now let me sleep in peace. If you wake me again, you'll regret it." So the old woman rocked him to sleep again, and when he was snoring, she pulled out the third golden hair. The giant jumped up, roaring at her in a terrible fury. But she soothed him and said, "This was the strangest dream of all. I thought I saw a ferryman who was doomed to row back and forth across a lake and could never stop. What is that charm that binds him?" "He's a silly fool," said the giant. "If he were to give the oar to one of his passengers, he would find himself free, and the other would have to row in his place. Now let me sleep." Next morning, after the giant left the cave, the woman returned the young man to his proper form and put the 3 golden hairs into his hand. Then she reminded him of the answers to his 3 questions and sent him on his way. When he came to the lake, the ferryman asked for the answer he had promised to bring him. "Row me across first, and then I will tell you how you may be freed," he answered. And when the boat reached the other side, he told the man that all he had to do was give the oar to his next passenger, and he would be able to go, a free man, a ferryman, furry. Then he went on to the city where the barren tree stood in the marketplace. "Get rid of the mouse gnawing at the root of the tree, and it will bear golden apples again," he said. They gave him 2 donkeys laden with gold, and he went on to the town where the dry fountain was. He told the guard how to cure the trouble, and they thanked him and gave him 2 more donkeys laden with gold. And now, at last, the lucky young man reached home, where he was greeted with the great joy by his wife. He gave the 3 golden hairs to the king, and when the king saw the 4 donkeys laden with gold, he was delighted. "You have fulfilled all the conditions, and so you may now have my daughter in marriage," he said. "But where did you find all this gold?" "By the side of a lake," replied the young man. "Can I get some of it, do you suppose?" asked the king. "Certainly," said the other. "Let the ferryman row you across the lake, and there you will see the gold lying on the shore like sand." Away went the greedy king, and when he came to the lake, he beckoned to the ferryman. He took him into his boat. When they reached the other side, the ferryman put the oar into the king's hand and sprang ashore. So when the king was left to row back and forth in his place, no doubt he is still rowing to this day, since nobody will trouble to take the oar out of his hands. That is quite the scry. Good night, Never Neverland.